sidewalk and their wheel catches just the right way, it will eject them out of their seat. And it can be really, really detrimental. So seatbelts are pretty crucial for the community dwelling person who uses a wheelchair. And then an alarm system. So a seat alarm is something that it would go underneath the client. As they go to stand, you would either hear an alarm sound, bells chime, or sometimes even loved ones can like record a message of, Dad, you need to sit down, you know, or call for a nurse, use your call light, depending on what type they have. So that's kind of an alarm system that you can use that they're referring to in this also. There's lots and lots of other pieces too that, you know, are used in wheelchairs and seating and wheel mobility. Also, but unfortunately they're not all on here right now. So I'm going to go to the next page. Oh, this also is giving me issues. Sorry, guys. So as far as the assignments go, hopefully that helps a little bit with explaining, making you guys see, okay, now we're going to have this client and knowing a little bit more about some of the options that you have. What you need to do for this assignment is you need to go through and you need to highlight what type of wheelchairs in each category are most appropriate. So for this 81-year-old woman who fell in her garden while picking tomatoes, she broke her hip, total hip replacement, she has kyphosis of the spine, edema in her legs. She will be using a wheelchair for mobility within the hospital long-term care center and is in rehab. She does not plan to use a wheelchair when she goes home, although she realizes she may need some support for walking. Okay, so then it says the size. So one of the first things you're going to look at is you're going to look at the height and the weight of this person. So she's not an unusually, I mean, she's appropriate. For her height, she's an ideal weight. So you could use a standard wheelchair for her most likely. I don't think, because there's not really anything that says like she's having trouble meeting her hip precautions or anything, I don't think you would need to do a recline for her. I think a standard wheelchair would be great. Then if you go over to leg rest, I'm instantly thinking elevating because she has edema. And so I'm going to probably pick elevating. Then I'm picking the heel loops and the calf pads because as we talked about, if you put elevating leg rest, the legs are going to fall off if you don't have that support. The armrest. At this point, I would say if they have adjustable, great. She doesn't need removable. She could even get away with regular because she's able to transfer out of her chair into a different seating device. So she doesn't need desk arms. Again, desk arms really think about for that more permanent wheelchair user. Then think about brakes. Doesn't seem like she's got any issues with that, so she could probably get away with regular brakes. Seat cushion, very minimal wheelchair user. So unless she's complaining of significant pain, I'd either go with a foam egg crate or a firm flat seat with a foam egg crate, just because that firm flat seat might provide her hip good positioning and avoid her sitting in kind of a weird position that could potentially pop the total hip replacement out or cause increased pain. Or you could put an abductor wedge in too, but that, again, she sounds like she's independent enough. I feel like, and she's not really crossing her legs. I don't think that that's necessarily appropriate. And then miscellaneous. Doesn't need a headrest because she's not going to be in it enough. Doesn't need lateral supports. Doesn't need a lap board. Doesn't need O2. Doesn't need hand projections. Contour back. Even though it says she has kyphosis, I mean, you could argue that maybe a contour back would make her more comfortable. However, she probably is not going to be in the chair long enough that it's going to make that big of a difference. So great. You have a chair that has a contour back. Fantastic. Go ahead and put it on because it will give her that lateral support that'll help engage her being in a better seating posture, but it's not going to be the end of the world if she doesn't have it. I don't think she would need a seatbelt or an alarm at this point because she can get up on her own. So I would go through and I'd highlight those things that I said that I felt like she would need. And then it says the type of approach is, so I would pick either anatomical or occupational based. What am I basing this seat off? Like the seat off of? Is it so that she can do all of her ADLs out of it and live out of it? Or is it based off of she has this disability for a short period of time, and I'm just going to do what I need to do so that she can sit in it as comfortably as possible. And then would any positioning changes or would any positioning change if you use the other approach? So if she was going to be a full-time wheelchair user, would you do anything different than what you said above? And then other equipment needed and where you obtained it from. So you could also think about anything else that might be helpful for her in getting around as a temporary wheelchair user that you could think of that might be out there. So that's in essence the assignment. So I would say just go ahead and go through the rest of these and do your best to kind of pick out what you think. There's a lot of potential here. So again, I don't really care if it's 100% right. I don't think there's 100% right on here. It's one of those, can you justify it or not? When you go to sit somebody in a chair, if you ever order them a wheelchair, you have to be able to justify to the insurance company why you feel they need this. And this is kind of an exercise in that. How do you pick a chair that's most appropriate? What are the components that you have to think about when looking at putting somebody in a chair that's appropriate for them? So that is really the exercise here. So don't get too hung up on, is there a 100% right answer? No, there isn't. I just need to see in your documentation as you're writing it out, I want to know your thought process.